The carnivore diet may have just gone mainstream. The United States Senate hosted a roundtable discussion where they had carnivore and keto advocates such as Jordan Peterson, Michaela Peterson, and even Harvard's Dr. Chris Palmer. Now, during this discussion, they each gave their stories and opinions on how this widespread chronic illness is not caused by genetic factors and that it's actually caused by diet. One of the most noteworthy speeches of the whole thing was that of Michaela Peterson, who gave her testimony on how an all-beef diet saved her life. But before we get into Michaela's speech, I want you to watch this clip from Robert F. Kennedy, where he essentially just completely dished Big Food, Big Pharma. It's a great watch.
The most valuable asset in this country today is a sick child. The pharma industry, the hospital industry, and medical school industry make more money when there are more interventions to perform on Americans. Laboratory scientists, many of them whom were formerly working for the cigarette industry, which purchased all of the big food companies in the 1970s and 80s, deployed their thousands of scientists to invent new chemicals to make our food more addictive. And these ingredients didn't exist 100 years ago. Humans are not biologically adapted to eat them. Hundreds of these chemicals are now banned in Europe, but they are ubiquitous in American processed foods. We are literally poisoning our children systematically for profit.
Now, regardless as to whether or not you like his politics, I think it's hard to deny that Robert F. Kennedy has a great message, and the fact that one of the most popular politicians in America is campaigning on making America healthy again is going to go a long way at helping reverse this chronic disease and getting people to avoid these ultra-processed foods. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard the story of Michaela Peterson. It's quite possibly one of the most impressive carnivore diet stories I've ever heard. Growing up, she had chronic arthritis and chronic depression. Before the age of 20, she had 2 joints replaced. It was debilitating. However, even despite the fact that she had 2 joints replaced, when asked if she would rather the arthritis go away or the depression go away, she said she would rather the depression go away. Now, she tried everything to get rid of these things. Everything the medical professionals told her did not work. That was until she started an all-beef carnivore diet.
I went to university for biomedical science when it became apparent that nobody in the medical system could help me, and the life-saving treatments I was on weren't saving my life. When I was 23, I completely changed my diet, which was radical, and I didn't think it was going to work. I removed processed foods and only ate whole foods, primarily meat, and my life changed rapidly. I felt like I had stepped out of hell I didn't know that I was trapped into heaven. It turned my world upside down. After I stopped taking the 8 medications I was on and had a baby, my autoimmune symptoms and depression started sneaking back in. And willing to do anything to not be sick, I tried, and this sounds ridiculous, but I tried eating only meat. And by that I mean beef, salt, and water only, knowing beef was the one food that didn't contribute to my arthritis and depression. Eating only meat put my symptoms into remission again in 6 weeks. I've only been eating beef and lamb for 7 years now in order to keep my symptoms in remission. I'm not on any medication. I have no symptoms of disease. I'm in complete remission after spending 16 years being medicated with multiple joints replaced.
Having stories like this shared in the United States Senate and then uploaded onto YouTube where everyone can see is huge for the carnivore message. The vast majority of people, including medical professionals, believe that chronic disease is caused by factors such as genetics, things that we cannot control. Now, to those people, I pose the question, where were all of these chronic disease genetics back in the year 1900, where not a single person in the United States had had a heart attack, where heart disease as we know it did not exist? Cancer, roughly only 5% of people got that, in comparison with 41% now. Only 0.5% of people had diabetes, only 0.5% of people were obese. Did all of a sudden our genetics just change? Or is there something else that's playing a role here? Now, you and I know the true culprit to this, and Dr. Chris Palmer, he made sure that everyone in the Senate knew this too.
These chronic diseases we face today, obesity, diabetes, fatty liver, all share something in common. They are, in fact, metabolic dysfunction. When we have metabolic dysfunction, it can drive numerous chronic diseases, which is a paradigm shift in the medical field. This is the concerted effort of lobbying by industry, food manufacturers, the healthcare industry. They do not want root causes discovered.
Now, what I find very interesting about Dr. Chris Palmer is that he is a professor at Harvard. Now, on the Harvard website, they list red meat as inflammatory. But Dr. Chris Palmer, he is a keto advocate, so he clearly disagrees with his own university guidelines, and in fact there are many other professors who hold similar views. However, they publicly cannot say this due to the fact that they don't want to lose their jobs. Now, the thing with all of this is there is a very clear solution, and that is to run large-scale studies on the carnivore diet. Now, back in 2021, Harvard actually did do one of these with 2,029 participants, and the results were incredible. 100% of diabetics came off injectable medication. 92% of diabetics came off insulin completely. The average person lost 20 pounds. 95% of people improved overall health. And as you can see by what's up on screen right now, in nearly every single possible metric, people improved. And as you scroll down further, you see more and more of this. Essentially, every single human issue that you can think of improved when they put people on a carnivore diet. Now, there are a few issues with this study, such as that people self-selected themselves, and they also self-reported findings. Now, if we did controlled versions of this study numerous times, it would leave no doubt as to the efficacy of the carnivore diet. People would have a real way to treat their conditions, and then we wouldn't have these annoying little vegan doctors on TikTok talking about how red meat's inflammatory because it is associated with this in some random study funded by the big food companies. I mean, as a whole, the world would be a better place. Now, this is what Jordan Peterson had to say about the next logical step forward.
What is the most logical, upward-aiming scientific approach to the problem of American health? Identification of diet as the potential common mechanism, radical simplification of that diet, analysis of programmatic variation of that simplified diet as food items are added in by category one by one. Those with chronic intractable illnesses could thus well be placed by default on a plant-free ketogenic diet for the several mere months that it would take to assess the consequences. This is a revolutionary but manageable proposition. Before it becomes a generalized standard of care, however, the relevant studies should be done. We have more than sufficient anecdotal data pertaining to the positive effect of such simplified diets. The testimony of thousands of people, which is not sufficient to constitute proof, but is certainly sufficient to justify hypotheses. The goal is health.
Now, as a whole, this is incredible for not just the carnivore movement, but also for the whole avoiding processed foods movement. It's incredibly clear to anyone with a functioning brain that the dietary guidelines currently set are causing severe problems. Like I said earlier, 41% of people get cancer, as well as the fact that 1 in 3 people have some sort of cardiovascular issue. At least 1 in 3 people will develop diabetes in their lifetime. Humans are the only species that get sick, and we didn't used to get sick. So it's very clear this is not a genetic issue and that something else is at play. One of the biggest problems with this whole event, though, is that these people in the Senate will have no idea what is going on. When they hear that an all-beef diet managed to cure all of these things, and how for some people it is essential to remove vegetables, they're going to be sitting there not believing a word. They've had it ingrained in them since birth. Vegetables are good for you. Eat your vegetables. Gotta have your veggies. And so because no one properly explained to them the whole plants are trying to kill you concept, where plants have these things like lectins, tannins, that harm us because, well, the plant wants to survive also. They are just going to be fundamentally confused. It would have been great to see all of this completely broken down to them. But this right here is a great step in the right direction. I do find it genuinely astounding how so many people genuinely hold the belief that red meat is bad for them. In fact, I spoke to Dr. Chaffee the other day and I asked him this exact question. How on earth did we get to this place? And he gave a great answer, which essentially involved lots of fraud. It's a very interesting story, and I'll actually leave the link to that interview right up on screen. Anyway, subscribe for more carnivore-related videos like this. See you guys next time.